I thought I'd make this video. I feel like I sort of struck a eureka moment. I could be completely wrong about this. I could be. I'm not saying that it was a fact. There's a good chance maybe it wasn't. But I think that this was the case. Someone bought my mother that car, the Dodge Intrepid that we had. I don't know who it was. Someone bought that car for my mother. I don't know who followed us. I don't know who or what. And the reason I say this, the only reason that makes me think this is because when I was there at the car dealership, this is how it went. We went to this car dealership. I don't remember where it was. It was like a 25-minute drive at least to get there. 25 to 35 minutes to get there. When we get there, I don't know if they just shot my chest and vibrated it and they hit it to the crucifix. And it's this guy downstairs, Ken Cooper's representative, who looks exactly like Ken Cooper in the fight for his life. And Marissa's dead body, or Miranda, or whatever her name is. We know that. And the reason I say this is because when we went to the car dealership, I remember my dad being in diapers. And it was very embarrassing because my father didn't seem to recognize that he was like in diapers and he's really not functional anymore. And one of the reasons I say this is because I remember praying. I remember praying to myself the entire time and praying that my father was not going to shit himself, because he had shitted himself before. When he had his diapers and it ran between his legs out of his diapers, and it was a disgrace to what it was making our family look like and what it was kind of conveying to what his mental state was, because he was very just like, oh, I don't care, I'm in diapers. I don't care, I'm in diapers. I can still live life and do what I want, you know. He still wants to keep going, and he's in diapers. And Frankie changed his diapers a couple of times. I have to tell you this right now. Frankie changed his diapers a couple of times with my mother. Frankie did that. I remember in our house he did that a few times. They wouldn't let me in the room. But I do remember, I thought they were going to kill my dad or do something. I think I talked about this many years ago, but they did change my dad's diapers, and I remember they wouldn't let me in the room. You know, I guess it was because the nurses told my mom and family that don't let heck, because I was too young to see that. I was 12 years old. I don't know why, but anyway, I thought it was important for me to say something, because when we went to this car dealership, I was just praying and hoping my dad wasn't going to shit himself. Like, he was in diapers and people could hear that, but I was just hoping that maybe you're just not going to shit yourself and embarrass all of us and yourself. And we have to stay like a unit. Like, have some dignity as a family. And I remember just thinking that my mother was going to steal all my dad's money. And I was like, and he didn't know what the fuck was going on. He didn't know what was happening. And what happened was is we get into the car, and before we get into the booth where the car dealership is, and this brunette-looking white woman, she was all white, American white, brown hair. I think she had maybe dirty blonde hair. I'm gonna say she had brown hair. She was a blue-eyed like Madison and Cooper. But when we went in there, my mom was had paperwork, and she's like, yeah, look, yeah, he wants to buy this car. And my dad was just sitting there with his diapers yeah, okay, I'll buy that car. But and he was just behaving like that. And I was standing there, and I was just thinking, we need a car. We're gonna get a brand new car, and well, we need a car for the family, and it'd be nice to have a car. I don't know if we can afford one, and I knew it was coming I started thinking, this is coming out of my dad's bank account, and this is right after he committed suicide. Or this is Yeah, this is like right. This was like right before he committed suicide, or right after. I can't. It was like right after because yeah, it was like after my dad committed suicide. It was like months after he committed suicide or something like that, and he was very disoriented. The loss was like 3 months before my sixth grade year ended, and yeah, because my dad committed suicide early when I was 12 years old. So yeah, it was like 6 months after he committed suicide. So he had some sort of rehabilitation. He was living in our house at the time, and my father looked like he just didn't know what the fuck was going on, what was going to happen with his money. That's what it looked like. I'm not, I'm not here to cover it. It looked like he didn't know what he was going to do with his money. He looked like he was just like, like what, like I just want to kind of, okay, I'll go ahead and do that right there, you know. And that's the way he was behaving. And I remember being angry, frustrated at my mother because I was, you know, I knew that she wanted to take the rest of him and then just suck him dry. And by this point, their relationship between my mother and father, they were not connecting at all as a married couple. It 100% looked like an old man was around a gold digger. That's exactly what it looked like. I know that my mother had, you know, intentions for a family and her suffering with that marriage, but I think she had good intentions, because you don't understand. Nobody wants to believe me that the paranoia. My mom was so nervous that Sara and Ken were going to get a hold of the money and control over my father, and because they had made threats so many times after my dad's suicide, and Robert Palomo, they were always feared that they had lawyers because they had a lot of money and they were white American, or they would behave white American. So I do remember when this lady was looking at my mother like you trash, you fucking trash and bitch, like you're just gonna get a free money. Given the fact how women are, when women look at each other, when they look at each other and they know somebody's going to get a lot of free money and they know that it's particularly in this fashion, it's not entirely scolded as a bad thing. But since the jealousy of you getting free money, nobody likes you getting free $50,000, $25,000 car. Nobody does. You're a Mexican wetback, and a white lady that has to work 8 hours a day at a car dealership has to watch you then smuggle it out of an old man in diapers, and then she has to go to work for 8 hours, and you're getting a brand new fucking car. And that's the way that it would have made him really jealous. There was a guy behind us that was on the right side of the building and the car dealership. And he was a white guy, kind of chubby. He kind of looked like my GED teacher, Fred, or I think it's Mr. Fred, or whatever his name was. Kind of looked like him a little bit. But when we were in that car dealership, after they were talking for like 30 minutes, and they were signing all kinds of different paperwork. I don't know what it was. I think I remember this guy. I remember this guy coming over to our cubicle, and he got on the phone, and he was on his computer, and he goes, oh, okay. And he, like, I don't know if he I want to say he had the phone and he hung up, and he was just like, okay. And goes over to my mother and father, and I don't know if my father was there at this particular, because we were there at the entrance for 30 minutes. We went and test drove the car, and then they went back to the cubicle, but I was outside for a good 30 minutes. But before I walked outside and we tested the car, we signed a bunch of paperwork, test drive the car. The guy was like, oh, this is a great car and all this other stuff. Yeah, you should go ahead and take this car. You should go and take this car. The guy that was the car salesman knew my dad was in diapers, and this guy was trying us to sell the car. He really was. At first, he was looking like, and you could tell this guy was gay, like, you know, because they always feel for one another, gay men that are married with straight women, because it's the homosexuality shame that it's like a gay man can be equal to a straight man and with a straight woman, and it's not that way. Well, I remember him act sort of like kind of suspicious, but kind of feeling like, well, he's gay, like one of us, you know. But when he showed us the car, he seemed kind of protective over my father, like, you know how the gays, we're gays or straight, we're real straight over here too. And we walk into the back into the office, and he gets on the phone with someone. I don't know if it was somebody that called him or somebody was on the computer screen, or he was on like the computer, and he goes like, oh, okay, like, and he goes over to the cubicle to us, and he said something like, can I speak to you? Or he said, you don't have to worry about that. Go ahead and put that paperwork. We'll go ahead and test drive the car. We'll go ahead and test drive the car. So we get into the car. But let me tell you this. This is one of the key points that I say why someone else bought this car. When we got into the car, we have already spent 10 minutes outside with this guy. And he sort of puts his hands in his pocket, and he's trying to think that my mom's like smuggling. Oh, so you think you can get around one of our gays, huh? And you could tell he was doing that. We already spent 10 minutes. This is when we go back inside, and then he gets on the phone. When we get back, he goes, we're going to go ahead. So don't worry, Miss Melendez. We'll go ahead and we'll get you. We'll go ahead and we're going to go test drive the car for you. We'll go. When we get into the car, and I'm in the car test driving the car, and I'm in the back seat, this guy his attitude is completely different. Completely different. Changes his attitude. He changes his attitude, changes his persona. He changes like into like he's trying to sell us this car. He is thoroughly going through all the buttons in the dashboard, going through this. And like, yeah, like you see, this is how you press automatic, and it just locks on cruise mode for you. And back then it was like, cruise mode was like a pretty navigating technology then, for a car. And he was explaining how you could do all these buttons and all the different stuff on the car. And this guy was trying to sell us the car. He was authentically like trying to yeah, I'm going to get you this car. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get you this car. I think this would be really great for you and your family. He did not behave that way when we first saw him. Bingo. He did not behave that way because he was sticking his hand in his pockets like a crooked sales gay guy trying to protect. He was trying to protect my father. And he looks at my mother and he goes, oh, and he goes like this. He goes, well, and he's like looking at my father and mother and how my mother was just like being a bitch, trying to steal money, because that's exactly what it looked like. But when we go inside the car dealership, he sits at his desk. We don't communicate with him again very much. We go to talk to this woman, and then after paperwork, 20 minutes, and I go outside 20 minutes, and I come back inside, and this is when this guy shows up, and then we walk out all together to go test drive the car. His attitude is completely different. His attitude is completely different. It is not like, this guy, he's a bad guy, she's a bad woman. It wasn't that. He was genuinely like trying to sell us the car. He was trying to sell us the car. So someone bought and paid fully cash and bought my mother or our family a brand new car. So it was, it was a family car. It wasn't, my mom bought the car, but it was a family car. We used it as a family. We went on vacation, couple of vacation trips. Frankie drove it to work. My mom went to work every day in it. My mom took care of the car really well. She had a leather bra on the car, red car we had. And my mom, the entire time that we had that car, this is how good my mom took care of the car. The interior, my mom put nothing but towels all over inside the interior of the car and all over the seats of the car, so the upholstery would be very protected. And this is one of the reasons that I thought also my mother was prostituting, because I didn't understand so much why we never got to use the upholstery in the interior of the car. We never did. We always sat on towels. It was comfortable. It made the car more comfortable, but we never actually sat on the actual seats. We never did. It was always like sweaters over the chairs, the front and driver, passenger and the driver's seats. There were towels on the back and on the bottom of the seats, very thick towels too, like at least 2 of them, like at least 2 for each seat. And I recall that when we were in the car, this is one of the reasons I believe my mother was prostituting, because because people have bodily fluids that she could clean up right away. And this is one of the problems that my dad had with my mom prostituting, or believing he was prostituting. But anyway, when we got into that car, that guy was desperately trying to sell us the car. His attitude was not the same. That when we got outside, he was looking at my mother like, you bitch, you're going to take advantage of this gay old man? Is this what we're only worth? No, this is gay community. This guy was gay, 100%. Not flamboyant, but this guy was gay. Goes back inside and he changes his attitude. Like, he's like, come on, yeah, come on, yeah. Come. Like, he's literally like, when we walk outside, he said, come on, we're going to go to this car, come on, we're going like all of a sudden someone gave him money. So when we get there, we test drive the car. I'm telling you, his attitude was completely different. He was authentically telling us all the buttons. Look, it's 120. It only has 400 miles on there. We're only this car is sitting. It's beautiful. It's a 1997, or I think it was 1997, 1996. I want to say it was 1997. Dodge Intrepid, maybe a 98, but I think it was 97. I was in 6th grade, and but it was the year of the car. So we purchased the car. Someone bought my mother this car. I don't know who followed us. I don't know who tailgated us. I was 13 years old when this car got purchased. I was 13 years old. 13 years old. It was like 3 months before, or like several months. It was after my dad's suicide. It was after my dad's suicide attempt. Because I remember that when my dad committed suicide, I remember being in the blue car with my mom, and my mom biting her nails, and like shaking, like mad at Robert and Sara and Ken. Like because Sara and Ken were already chasing the nursing home we were going to, and they're already there many miles. And Robert Palomo stalked us and took Frankie in the car, basically held my mother hostage. And my mom was like, she was like a wetback Mexican that was going against white American flag George Bush, and like, you have no ammunition. Like, you're talking about, this is white power, Detective Ken Cooper, in full force. And we're following in the car this way, and I talked about this before. My mom was like shaking. Well, that car we used, we were in the blue Dodge Ram that we had. And I remember me sitting in the car because Julian was on the right seat of the car and my mom was driving. I said, Mom, are you okay? And I remember being elevated up and looking at Frankie above us, or in front of us, with with Robert Palomo in a convertible car. And he was trying to flash him a lot of money. And Robert Palomo shouldn't have been driving a convertible because it made it look like he had a lot of money. So they were essentially after my mother, especially Sara and Ken at this time. It was horrific. My mother was shaking in anger because they were turning Frankie, and this is when Frankie started to turn against my mother a little bit. And Sara and Ken were doing it, and Robert Palomo played along with it. So that was done. But when we get this car, 6 months after the suicide, he makes his rehabilitation, he's living at our house. My mom tries to get him to spend all the money. So that means that of all this commotion and all this stuff that was going on, somebody intervened and said, wait a minute. You have a World War II veteran, all these other things. I don't know who it was, because they know all about Michael Jackson. They know all about this guy raping my mother. I mean, raping Frankie. Remember, you got to feel sorry for the faggot and transgender, Diana and Miguel, because they're gay and they're transgender and they don't go to prison and they're just going to clean up and fix things. I'm almost 100%, this is what I'm going to say, I'm going to leave it at 80% that car was purchased by someone else. It wasn't my father. Someone bought that car for my mother. Someone bought that car for my mother. For my family, my mother and our family. And we used it as a family. We used it as a family. We went to restaurants like we're supposed to, so it was a nice thing that somebody did. Who did it and for what reasons? I don't know. My father was in a debilitating state within after that car was bought and we took it home. My mom, no more than probably a year, my dad stayed at our house. I say another 6 months before he got put in a nursing home. And that was it. He never got out again. And so, as far as I have anything to say with this, one of the reasons that leads me to this evidence is because there was a guy by the name of Manny. And I lived in Dallas, Texas, and he drove a Toyota Prius. And he looked exactly like one of the guys that used to work at Standard Register. I could have sworn he had like a real musky mustache, real thick and full, like a very healthy, strong mustache. And not mustache, beard. Like the way beard I used to have, but very full, very thick. Like the hair follicles are very thick. Like he had very strong hair growth. And one of the guys that just don't ever go bald in their life. They just have a full set of hair, full set of beard, all their whole life. And he's a Mexican guy. And I lived with him for like 3 months while I worked at a phone company like Metro PCS building or some shit like that over in Richardson. When I lived with him, he told me, he didn't say my mother, but he said, yeah, that's my sister that lives over there. And he goes, yeah, I bought her that car over there. Yeah, I bought her that car. I bought my daughter that car right there. He goes, yeah, I bought her that house right over there too. And so I'm sure they bought my mother another car when she moved into her mansion. But I don't have anything to do with that. I can't. That's her money. That's somebody else's gift. But as far as it goes from me being a kid, I think it was because they know that I didn't know somebody had given away that car. Because that guy's attitude completely changed. So someone called this guy and bought my mother that car. Our family a car. I don't know who did. That was a $25,000. The car off the dealership was $25,000. A little more. It was like 20 altogether with tax and everything. It was like 27,000, but it was like $24.99. You know, like $24.99. You know, $24,999. You know, they knock off $1. You know, to hopefully sell the pitch of the idea of the car. But that car was 25, estimated 25 or maybe a little more, walking out the parking lot, fully paid off for. I don't know who, what was going on. But if my dad committed suicide, this must have been around the time that they started to find out about the identical twins. Because they knew about the identical twins many years ago, way before my dad's suicide. Diana and Miguel knew about the identical twins way before my dad committed suicide. Because I remember them saying, I know where Jillian is. And this is how they would hold my mom hostage, because the gay community is over there. So the gay community tracks down Michael Jackson's leaders and molesters, and they said, look, we did it for Michael Jackson and Ken Cooper. We did it for the gay community, radio station, 97.9 The Beat, hip-hop, transgender faggots. And that's why. So they know how to threaten my mother, but they wouldn't directly say that. And I remember them both walking together, and she signaled to Miguel, and she pointed at Julian, and she goes, and pointed like a distance, like over there. Not in a disrespectful way, like they were a team to take control. So they knew this. There was a group of people that knew about this for many years. I mean, obviously they probably figured out where my mother lived after so much time. So somebody, because when I was 14 years old, going to summer school, I talked about that I was in my math class, and this guy named Heath, and I just got done talking to him. We were talking that he had identical twins, and he told me he had an identical twin. Maybe I listened to that wrong. That's what I remember him telling me. So the fact that Heath had I didn't know him very well. I just had him for a math class, and he was like some sort of math genius or some shit. But he scored a pretty high IQ, I think, at some point. But anyway, we got along with Aaron Mendoza, and he didn't need it for tutor. He just wanted to have something to do that was schoolwork. He didn't need to be there, but he just happened to be there, and I mentioned something, and I looked at my math teacher, and I'm 14 years old. This is 2 years after we buy this brand new car. So by this time, this is a very close period of time in this whole investigation. I looked at my math teacher when I mentioned twins, when I was looking in time in a conversation somewhere else, and she goes, and you could tell they were thinking about something else that's going on. So it's related to me. And so I thought it was important for me to talk about this. I don't even have the earthly. You know what I was taking a big guess in who bought this car? Michael Jordan. I know it sounds crazy, but I was thinking it was Michael Jordan. Because I had Michael Jordan's number 23 jersey. I got this jersey when I was in 6th grade. And I got his jersey when I was in 6th grade, and I kept it for like 25 years. I kept it for like 15 years. I only wore that jersey like 3 times. I'm not kidding you. I kept it in mint condition. Mint condition, like it was in a plastic case. I didn't touch it. I didn't do anything. It was a Michael Jordan jersey. It was like one of my prized athletic possessions that I had, because I didn't have a lot of nice clothes, and that was a really cool jersey I got to have. And it was Jordan's jersey that I had. And anyway, I wore it like 3 times and just had it in basically my closet there for looks, right? And I was thinking, well, maybe how he got connected to it. Maybe it wasn't him, but I have no idea who could have bought my mother a car, because who could have bought? I have no fucking idea. What's so confusing about who could have done that? Could it have been Sara and Ken that bought my mother that car? I think they could have in my opinion, I think they could have got somebody else to do it. And the reason I think that is because you have so many people that have so much money, and you have Michael Jackson on the table in this sexual rape. So in order to help cover that up, what you have to do is you have to get Ken Cooper, the authority, the white mascot, the blonde and blue eyes, the detective hero. Remember, this person is always in charge of things and able to dominate all human life. Scavenge the dead remains of my dead sister and mouth off anytime he wants. So what he needs to do to cover up his homosexuality and this pig life that he's done, and strictly to my sister and my family, and allow Frankie to get raped, he has to have somebody else pay for the car, because you want money in order to enrich your life, but you don't want to be trailing it back to him, because you don't want it to be trailing back. If I give you money, you'll be preoccupied mentally, and you'll be going mentally somewhere else. But you're never going to find out that he knew about Frankie being raped at the age of when I was 5 years old, when we visited Michael Jackson in our fucking house. And he didn't help, say, or do, or send cards. Neither did Sara, and so did Sara Cooper also knew, and I caught them. So I wanted to say this because I think that that's who would have done it. Yeah, somebody that was connected, that was covering up for Sara and Ken, would have done that for my mother, because they knew about the rape. So to me, in my opinion, what I have to say about, I mean, I don't know who could have got involved, but it was an investment that someone made. You know Michael Jackson and the rape. You know that this is bigger, more important. This is no bullshit. This is for Ken and Sara. So, in my opinion, I don't know really what else to think of that. I don't know what else. I don't know what to think of that. I don't know what to think of that situation, because I'm thinking, was it a celebrity? Was there a celebrity we didn't know? How did they know we were even at the dealership? How did they even know that we were at the dealership? Did somebody tell my mother to go to that dealership? Did somebody did somebody say something to my mother or father, say, go to this dealership, they have some good sales? Go there on a Saturday, there's a specific guy that knows that's waiting for us maybe, and we arrive at around this time, this guy, no one knows. But I do know this guy's attitude completely changed from, I'm going after this bitch Celestina, stealing Raymond Gate community members' money and taking advantage of this old piece of shit to protect him, to then we're getting in the car and he was, yeah, come on in, let me help you. Come on, we're going to go test this car. Like, completely different. And I'm thinking, because when he was in the car, he was just like willingly like, yeah, look, yeah, you see, you get this in, it's great. It's a great driving car, has all the abilities, and he was not like that. Body language, expression when we were walking outside. So, who could have known that we were inside that dealership? Who knew? Who tracked this down? Who knew about this? I remember being outside when my dad was in diapers, just praying, hoping he wasn't going to shit himself and make us look like even worse, and my mom worse, and my father, like he was just horrible. And I remember thinking to myself, I was getting angry at my mother. I was getting angry. I didn't say that to her, but I remember expressing like, how are you going to pay for the car? Like, because my dad didn't have any defense, and I remember just walking outside and just gazing over the sort of sky and other cars in the area, and there was hardly anybody there. There was like nobody there. There just happened to be really no one there, and it wasn't a big car dealership. It kind of looked like a private dealership, And but it was a brand new car, and they had several of them, but it was a brand new mint condition car. So when we're there, the fact is that this guy, and I remember, okay, I'm looking at this guy and I'm outside as this guy's like punking out my mother, and I remember they go back inside and I'm just thinking to myself, I don't know if I should call the cops, I don't know what to do, and I'm thinking to myself like, God, what should I do? Like, we need a family car, and I know this would be good for a family car. And I remember like thinking to myself about God. I remember thinking to myself like, God, what should I do? He's like stealing my dad's money, but like, we need a family car, and I can go completely along with it. And I knew I could, and I was thinking to myself, should we go along with it? Because I was starting to feel like really guilty. Like, I'm supposed to protect my father, and now you're stealing his fucking money. But we need a family car, and we're going to be stranded. And I knew my mother was very scared and nervous, because the fear of Sarah and Ken and the Cooper family always taking control, manipulating my mother and my family was always, from the very beginning, a problem. And always, it was a very, very aggressive behavior between Ken Cooper and Sarah against my mother and Frankie. It was aggressive. So what the fucking motherfuckers? I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm not trying to. I don't think they're. I'm happy that somebody bought us a car, but that means my dad's fucking money didn't get spent. That means my dad's money didn't get spent. Because this is where I believed that my dad got his money stolen from. This is where I believed that the money portion got spent on. There was nowhere else that I thought either the money got stolen by cash, by hand, or it was paid for that car. There was only two places I knew from the very beginning it went. Somebody took the money with Lucio and all them. My mom took it to hide it and take it, or it was to spend the money on that car. She spends it, and then we take off. So somebody bought my mother that car. Who was it? I had no earthly idea. My mom took good care of it. I don't know what to think about that. I don't know who's going to buy my mother a car. I could be wrong about this. I could say maybe it wasn't somebody who didn't buy a car, but I'm going to say yeah. I'm 80 to 85%, because the reason I say is this guy's attitude completely changed when somebody called him and says, "No, you do that." I swear to you, and he was he wasn't a good salesman, but you know, and the fact that he knew he had to make that he got a free car sale out of some pathetic Mexicans and someone's going to buy us a car. But he was thoroughly going through all the shit, like really trying to sell us a car. This is a great family, and he was not behaving this way. He was not behaving this way. I don't know who it was, but I remember watching and glancing for a moment, and he was like, "Okay, all right." Like he just got a free car sale. So who was it? It's mysterious. I don't have the slightest idea who it is. I don't have the slightest idea. Other than Sara and Ken would have been connected to it. Sara and Ken, I believe, would have been connected to it because there was such a war between Ken Cooper and Sara and my mother. There was such a horrific war. There was such a horrific war that was so bad that I'm telling you, they wouldn't even look at each other. We got to the nursing home, and Sara was on one end, and my mom was like with her purse, like a fucking peasant woman in Russia that lives in the fucking mountains and has like 3 apples in her fucking purse to feed her 4 children, and like these are my babies. Like she was like a mother bear. Like you better not, you fucking bitch. And she was showing her teeth almost. She was almost like because it was real nasty. Because Ken Cooper didn't talk and comfort. They just walked by my mother, and it was disgusting. It was like Ken Cooper led the charge to attack my mother, and he was having Sara do it for him. But he showed his presence to threaten my mother. And I talked about that we were in our blue car at this time. I talked about we arrived there. They didn't make eye contact and with my mother. And Ken Cooper looked and he turned his head away very quickly, like to do this to my mother. He didn't move his hand, but he didn't make eye contact. Like he gets in, he's walking, and he sort of just kept this looking away, and gets in the car like we're gonna get this bitch. Yeah, we're gonna get this bitch, Sara. And that's what he was doing. And Sara started laughing, goes, "Ah!" and did that when we were walking in. My dad's inside the nursing home. And then they left, and then Robert Palomo shows up with Frankie in the convertible because he's driving in front of us. We all get out of the car and we go into the nursing home. And this happened, we went to this nursing home, I want to say twice. 2 or 3 times at most. I'm going to say no more than 3 times. And I remember one of the guys that my dad became friends with. My dad became friends with a guy there. There was a younger guy there, and my dad was in there with a guy. He seemed, I can't remember. He was a very healthy, strong-looking guy. He looked very big. He was muscular, like hoggy built, but like Mexican. Like he looked more on the Mexican side, and very thick hair. He was just like looked very healthy person, and he was like a very big alcoholic. And I remember my dad enjoyed being in company with this guy because my dad was like, "Hey, this guy right there he's an alcoholic. He was a real bad alcoholic, and he was like a rehabilitation center." Anyway, so I thought I would talk about this because I have no idea. I can never think of any idea of anyone that would have intervened at this point to buy my family a car. That means my dad's money is still available. My dad's money is still available. Because if you're willing to buy that car, you're also willing to protect that money. If you're willing to protect the family, the interest of the mom and dad and the children, because we don't have the money, you're also willing to do the investment to say, "Mr. Palomo is not going to lose out on $50,000. I just bought you a car." So that money's still available somewhere. That money's still somewhere. Bingo. So I gotta say, it was very benefiting to have that car. It was a very kind thing to do this to our family. It really was. Who did it though, and for what interest behind it? Well, It's either too late or someone has to do the investigation. But Frankie was being ass fucked the entire time. Remember how Ken and Sara are in charge. The manipulation of intelligence is very sophisticated, and you have to understand the interests of other people, of what they're in it for, and what their sacrifice and what their intentions are, and what they want to cover up for personality. People will kill you if you spoil their relationship of secrecy of how they live. Like, it's such a boiling point to someone, they'll kill you, and it's such a violation to their homosexuality. That's why flamboyant gay people are probably more even comfortable to be associated with, because they're comfortable to who they are, and they're not trying to hide anything. They're very comfortable who they are. They don't have to hide the shit. So, but I thought it was important for me to talk about who bought that car. I mean, I'm thinking it's a celebrity. It has to be a celebrity. Who bought my mother that car? It has to be someone that could have gotten involved. So not only we got a family car for free, when we got that car, 2 years later, this is what happens. We bought the car. When I was 13 years old when we bought the car. Within a year of my dad, when we bought that car, my sister, who has Down syndrome, dies. That little girl dies. And you know what makes me think? I'm thinking to myself, I'm not trying to be jealous. I'm glad that Ivan got a brand new car. He got the car that he really loved and liked. It was a Mustang. It was a Ford Mustang. It was like his dream car. And my mother told me and said that Ivan was playing car notes because he was working at Walmart, which he did. For like 1 year, for a total of 1 year, Ivan had his bicycle and he drove it to Walmart 5 days or 4 days a week. I swear to you, he got on his bike and he drove for 1 year, saved up all his money, and after a year, he bought that car. And that's how I thought he bought it. And I was like, damn, to me, I was like, he put me to shame because he was like really accomplishing shit, you know? Like, he got a job, he did a blue collar, saved his money. But who's to say that if you bought my mother a car and this girl's about to die, you don't buy Ivan a car? And I thought, and I'm thinking right now, did my mother lie and tell me? Because my mother told me that he was paying car notes on that car. This is 100%. My mother told me, and I asked her, not in anger. I said, "Oh, you see, I got a new car." And he goes, "Oh, sí. Le está pagando car notes. Le cobra mucho. Sí. This is what my mother told me. Now, remember, my mother's good at lying. You have a dead child. She's not telling me that's my sister, and you have a twin right over here. So did I want someone buy Ivan that car? Which would have been another nice thing. Would have been another nice thing to do. Because you had that little girl that's an investor for Michael Jackson and the gay community and Ken and Sara Cooper at the radio station. Bingo. Within 1 year, I want to estimate no more than 18 months of purchasing that car, my sister dies. That little girl that was hanging just like Jesus' cross when Ivan was walking her, that was the last. I was watching the lifeless body of my sister. He took care of her, I didn't. Remember, this is Keynote 97 on the beat for what it is on hip hop stage, because he's real sweet and cool. Look at his green and sweet and nice, and I know how to manipulate that shit. Nobody understands these dynamics about what's going on. Okay? That little girl's dead now. Did Ivan, my mom told me, she told me this. In more than one conversation, she told me this. He was paying car notes for that car. Saying that, oh, see. And the way that she expressed it when I talked to her in the kitchen, she was like, oh, see. This is how she looked like. Sí. Él paga por carro, sí. Está pagando mucho por carro, sí. Wait a minute. My mother's acting. she would need to say that because she doesn't want. She likes the way the situation is. Ivan takes care of the little girl. He gets a brand new car. My mom told me that Ivan's mother told my mother, said that, no, paga, si él paga, yo fui para allá, y me dijo que si, él me dijo que él paga mucho dinero, le paga un payment cada mes, él paga un down payment, sí. This is how my mother expressed it. Si él pongo un down payment así, y él paga, no, si está pagar por el carro, si él está pagando cada mes, pero póngale un running down payment que guardó todo su dinero, trabajando allá a Walmart, y luego compró ese carro, le pongo un down payment y más le daba como unos 4,000 or whatever, más le daba unos centavos. He paid a big chunk of it, cash front, and then he was making monthly payments. And over the next 2 years, my mother, we had conversations about it, and she said, oh sí, ya va a pagar el carro, no, ya acabó pagando el carro, ya de tiempo ya se lo pagó, mira Héctor, ¿por qué no te pongas a trabajar? Porque te puedes comprar un carro también. Después Sara compró un carro y luego mira Iván, mira que Iván hizo, mira que Iván está haciendo, mira que Iván hizo esto. Y si, mira, en el tiempo que tú, mira, él ya compró un carro. Sí, mira. This is how my mother would say. She's saying, look here, he bought a car for himself. He saved up all his money, and he did. I used to watch him every day, like 4 days a week, at least 4 to 5 days a week, at least during the summer. And he would work at Walmart, and he was working 40 hours, sometimes more. And he saved up all his money. He did. I remember I'd seen him lock up his bike at Walmart a couple times, but every time I'd seen him drive his bike, over on the next street over, the right street right in front of us. So, in this discussion, did my mom buy it saying that someone bought her that car? Because guess who got another car? That transgender. She drove a white Honda Civic. When she first moved into that house, let me tell you this, when she first moved into that house, she didn't own a car. My mother got a car, Dodge Intrepid. And then this lady next door got within a year after we bought our car. It was probably like 2 years. You could probably look up the car records for this. From what I remember, we bought this car and I was 13 years old. By the time I was 14, early 14, that lady had just bought a car as well, and it was a pretty good shape newer car, Honda Civic. But she didn't have anything when she moved into the house to take care of that little girl. Did someone buy her that car? Okay, nice thing again. Ivan didn't get that car Mustang until he's like a couple months after his 16th birthday. He was 16 years old when he got that car. 15 years old. He's a little older than me, I think. He's like 6 months, I think, older than me. 8 months older than me. His birthday, I think, is in September. I think his birthday's in September or like August or something like that. Somewhere between June and October, I think his birthday's in. I'm going to say I think his birthday's in September or August. And if they bought my mother a car, why wouldn't you want to go help? If you see how they were trying to steal the money from my dad, you're trying to protect that money for yourself, for Sara, and whatever yappy what you want to do. So then what happens if this little girl's dying? You know where we live. You're willing to spend $25,000 and not find out things about my mother or this dead little girl? Or this sick little girl that's my sister? So for the next few years, my mother tells me that he's making car notes, and he's paying a big chunk of car note to pay it off very fast, is what my mother told me, unless he saved up all his money. Because Ivan, to my recall, when I was around him financially, he was very good at saving money. He was very good at saving up money. He really was. He was very good at saving up money. So does it fit his? He didn't have friends. I knew what kind of people he had. I invited him several times to come over to hang out with me and friends, and he wouldn't want to. He liked being by himself. He liked kind of doing his own thing. He didn't really like being around friends. I tried hanging out with him a couple times. He got older. He was nice to me and everything, but you could tell his personality. Like to me, that's what I have to say about it. I was very friendly with him, and this is after my sister passed away, and he didn't want to hang out. He was kind of a loner. He was a loner. Not a loner. A loner is probably not the right word. He just liked doing his own thing by himself, like doing his own thing. And so he never had other friends that showed up, ever. Maybe one or two. That was it. Nobody. And he just went to work and did his class at school, and my mom told me that he was studying to become a police officer. He was seriously considering to study to be a police officer. So my mother told me, and he was thinking about studying to become a police officer or work in the police department. I don't know I don't know the fields and departments and stuff, all that, criminal justice, but he was interested in working in the criminal justice field. I don't know if he did ever enroll. I don't think he did, but my mom told me that. So yeah, él quería trabajar, quería escuela para ir a trabajar. Sí, como quiere ser como policía, grande como policía. My mother would express it this way. Sí, como grande, and the way she says this is just like it's a very big personality person, like especially because we're Mexican and we're wetbacks and we don't understand what large personality, education, high level Mexican status, because we're not in the music, we're not in the entertainment business, the presidents, Congress, there's nothing but blacks and whites out there, and they own everything. The Mexican community is very, very weak when it comes to very political gains and power, and to crush and kill the way that the whites and the blacks can do it. Other human life. It's not in the U.S. at least. So I say this because the execution chambers, the judges, and most of these people that do death sentences, they're not high-level Mexicans, Latins. But anyway, I wanted to talk about this. So if this is the case, I don't know. My mother told me this. She was making heavy card notes. He was making a lot of money card notes. He was paying like $500 or $400 a month. And my mom told me that he was paying rent. Sí, no, él no vive ahí gratis, él paga renta. This is how my mother now begins to tell me and use it against me that she wants me to pay her money when I'm 14, 15 years old. So my mom told me that when Ivan was living there, she said that since the family had a little dead girl and a very sick girl, he took care of her. He was very formal about his life. And that transgender that lived there, that I didn't know was a transgender at this time, since David was very strict with Ivan, which he was pretty strict with his dad. He kept Ivan in order. He really did. That means, which follows through, that you would have made your son help out in the house. Everybody has to pay out a little bit to help to pay out the house. Everybody puts in a little bit of money or a little bit of work and a little bit of money to pay for the house. We all live here. Okay, and it's to teach Ivan to pay his bills. This is how David would have been. I know his personality and how they lived somewhat in that house. But I didn't pay rent. Now this is what started to put fear in me. Nobody understands this because I'm thinking my mom wants money. You just put my dad in a nursing home on his fucking money, and I saw this shit. Now, and I'm doing my own investigation of what my dad's money and figuring out by this time. I'm 14, 15 years old. I know there's $50,000 floating somewhere, and my mother's hiding it. So, and Frankie too. So I don't know, my mom told me, because she told me that he was paying a little bit of bills to live there. He was paying like a little bit of bills. Now my mom's a very good manipulator. She has to be this way. Mothers have to do what they have to do to protect the children and their own assets, right? They have to do not my mother's twin. My mother's twin is a disgusting parasite, but this is how they're manipulating for the President of the United States, for Barack Obama, for the niggas, and for the transgenders. So, and for the whites now. and then scum the worthless dead corpse, Marissa's dead body for credit, and how you gonna split that credit up? Oh, Ken Cooper, the white power for Madison. So anyway, for Sarah Cooper, I know Frankie was getting ass fucked the whole time. So anyway, I thought I would talk about this. Bingo! Somebody bought that mama another car, huh? Yeah. I don't know who it could have been. I'm trying to think who in our life. No one ever called our house. No one ever wrote letters that could have represented a lot of money. Maybe the only person is Kathy. They were multimillionaires and they wanted dominance over the house, my dad, and they actually attacked me when I was inside my house. I wanted to kill this guy. I wanted to grab a knife and stab kill this fat ass piece of shit politician guy that showed up inside my house. I wanted to kill this motherfucker. It's a few times that I felt like I could grab a knife and get away with it because he stepped inside the house with that intentions. So I know Kathy was a very vengeful, white, trash, blonde bitch, lesbian, fucking piece of shit, motherfucking bitch, and she was related to Lupe's boss and how they were trying to team up and take my dad's shit. So, bingo! I can't believe that somebody bought the house. I'm trying to think. Was it Kathy that bought the house? Maybe. Ken Cooper and Sarah Cooper had something to do with it. Something to do with it. They either told the people, it would have cleaned up. Who got involved? Did they buy? Because this lady that took care of my sister, or abused her, and cooked shitty food, very nasty fucking food. I remember smelling the food. I walked in there a couple times, and the way that she was making the food was fucking like, just like throwing the fucking food. Like that. Like it was not like, this is a transgender fucking... This person was from Mexico, but she took care of the child. I talked about she hit the child a couple of times, and she seemed a little kind of kooky. She seemed kind of crazy. But I thought it would be important for me to talk about. Because she didn't make any money. And my mother told me that I remember my mother's making soup, and she was really upset, and she said that they're getting a paycheck for that little girl over there. Paycheck for that girl over there. I was 14 years old when my mother told me that. 14 years old. I was 13 because if she died when I was 14 and I had been 13, so I was 13 years old. But I'm going to say 8 to 10 months, I would say estimated 10 months before she died that my mother told me this. And I remember being the height I was, walking in the kitchen, and my mother was cooking. And she expressed, and it was around the time we went to Cece's. It was around that time we went to Cece's. Because, let me tell you, I never shared this. This is what I now remember. This is what I remember also. I'd like to talk about this. We went to Cece's. Me, Ivan, and Ivan's mother went to Cece's. And we went to Cece's Pizza as a family, all of us in the car. And we all got there, and me and Ivan were all playing, Ninja Turtles and shit, arcade, and they had the Simpsons arcade and shit. Those are the two games they always had. And anyway, Daytona USA, or I think it was Cruise. I think it was Daytona USA before they put the Cruise shit there, but it was Daytona USA on the old school. But when we were there at CC's Pizza, we never associated our family with their family to all go together. And the little girl that was sick, Marissa Moreno, whatever her name was, she did not come with us. And this is what happens. I talked about this. The day that we went to Cece's, I think it was only once before that we went to Cece's. Could have gone twice, but I remember this, the once that we did, and it was unusual, and I thought it was kind of like a neighbor celebration. I don't know. But they took, I guess, the girls somewhere else to take care of babysit. Ivan's mom, we all go to Cece's and Ivan, and we're all having a great time. Julian is with us. Me, Julian, my mom, Ivan, and Ivan's, that lady that lived there. Before we left to Cece's, I remember, I don't know what Ivan did, but his stepmom grabbed something out of the fridge or something, and Ivan put I even put the paperwork of some bills that were owed or some important paperwork, and he put it on the refrigerator. I think it was on top of the refrigerator, or he put it on the fridge, and it was like 2 weeks old. And I remember having the conversation, and my mother looked over at the people and goes, "Oh, Ivan, this is olvides." And then the transgender that was next to my mother, that took care of the nurse's Down syndrome, had the paperwork, and she goes, "Ivan, no haces ese." And she hit Ivan with the paperwork, and he kind of went like this, and he just stayed very, very quiet and still. And my mom was standing next to Ivan, but she wasn't retaliating against Ivan. She was like, "Oh, Ivan, no haces ese." And then later that day, we went to Cece's. And I remember before we got into Cece's, I don't think I ever experienced Ivan mad like this. And Ivan walked by me, and he was looking at me, "Man, I fucking hate that bitch. She's fucking crazy, man. I'm telling you, she's fucking crazy." And he talked like that. He talked with a heavy expression, very intense, like he was fucking dying inside or some shit. Like he was dying inside to say this shit. Like he never had expressions like this. And he hated the fact that he had been shamed. Like, she's fucking crazy, man. I'm telling you, that fucking bitch is fucking crazy, man. I'm telling you. And he never behaved like this, but he looked like he had been saving, internalizing this shit. And then we get in the car, and his eyes are just red. Like he was just not having the best time because his mom kind of shamed himself in front of my mother. I didn't know what was going on. I was standing on the porch, or sort of like in a doorway. So we go into Cece's Pizza, which is very unusual, and we left. We go to pizza. There seemed to be a bad situation. I don't know what. Frankie was not with us that day. Frankie didn't come with us. It was me, Ivan, Julian, my mom, and this transgender. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 of us. We're in the Dodge Intrepid. So that I can remember, it was like right when we got this Dodge Intrepid. But this woman bought that car when she first moved into that house, it took like, it could have been 2 years, but I'm going to say a year to 2, just to put on the safe ratio before she got a car. She didn't have a job. She never had a job. This is what my mother told me. She didn't have any source of income, and that guy was supporting her. She was taking care of the kid. Now, if she's taking care of the kid, where are you getting money to pay for that car? The Social Security check, or did somebody else buy you that car? Because my mother told me when I was in the house, and she told me, she says that ella era Social Security y estaba dando su dinero, es como Rosa chiquito carro, es como un chiquito carro. So my mother does like this expression by saying, "Sí, compró un chiquito carro." And the reason she's saying that, like, okay, I'll give you some of that because you take care of the dead little girl. You know, I can't. We have to give you something for that. It's an exchange. It's good. That's the expression. That's what she's conveying. So, in this particular situation, when I say this, I have to find. I don't have to find out, but you have to find out whether that someone paid for that car, and someone paid for Ivan's car, because Ken Cooper was also talking about Ivan, and he said that Ivan, he saved up all his money, and he had a job, and he didn't have to pay rent, and he took good care of that girl, and, you know, real good care of her. And so Ken Cooper was acknowledging to me, but not saying her name and who he really was talking about. He took care of her. He was Big Daddy Bear, Big Ken Cooper. He took care of her. Yeah, he did. He did a good job. I say he did a good job, and that's when he gets a good job. Yeah, Ken Cooper. And so he's very dominant to say he's in order because he plays the police officer. I'm going to arrest you. I'm a police officer. I'll fuck you up. This is Nazi Germany right here, motherfucker. That's how the way that he processes shit. It's Nazi Germany. And almost like he has a swastika on him. But so I thought it was important. If you bought my mother a $25,000 car, she was an immigrant. I where does she get this money? She never worked. She never had a job. And he was supporting her. My mother told me this. And my mother told me that she was getting Social Security, but when she tells me, she's like, sí, está teniendo, ella tiene Social Security. I don't care. See, it's like, and so she does this behavior to say, okay, yeah, my dead daughter, yeah, I have to shit out another kid for for Ivan's family, or, I have to shit out another kid to survive for my family. But I understand, but back, And that's the sort of portrayal of this character of what my mother's doing. So as far as I have anything to say with this, who was it? Nobody will ever know. As far as I have anything to say with this, I have no idea. If they bought my mother a car, they had to have spent money over there. Because remember Michael Jackson? Remember Ken and Sara Cooper at the radio station? Do you know when Ken Cooper put his son, his transgender kid at the radio station? Was when I was 12 years old when he got that job. I was right before or right after my dad's suicide. I'm going to say it was right before or right after my dad's suicide. Kenneth Cooper, DJ Keno, he did have no background of anything and just got a prime spot on our own radio station. This is all the faggots and gay community that work in there. I've been in that office before. I've seen the faggots and I scoped the place out. Nothing but faggots. And they're all in on it. There's all faggots and exchanges for police power enforcement and Michael Jackson enforcement for the faggots and gays and LBG and transgender movement. And you can broadcast that shit over lots of people. Go after Frankie and Julian and Hector. Go after his mother. Gut Hector out. I told you. You see how Ken Cooper works? Police officer. So it's a very tactical situation. It's very penetrating. It's very it's a very covered up. I know exactly what's going on, but it's too late. But as far as I have to say, I don't have. I know they bought my mother that car. Maybe nobody bought my mother. Nobody. Maybe they did. But my mother was upset. She didn't express sincerity very well when she got a car. She said that she compró un carro así, sí. Ella sí tiene un chiquito carro. And so she says this like, oh yeah, because she has to find the balances to help that child and feel good about herself, that she can't take care of that child, but you're going to get some money out of it. So she still has the connection to want to care for that child. But she has to care for herself and other children. Bingo. So, as far as it goes with those two cars, I don't know, but someone bought that car. So someone spent that money. If someone spent this money, what money would have spent? What other money they would have spent? What other money they would have spent to secure Michael Jackson and the rapes that happened to Frankie? By the time Frankie's last time homosexual rape was when he was, I want to say, early 14 years old to 13 years old. No later than, he didn't pass 14. He could have been early 14, but I'm going to say about 13 years old, because I'm 4 years older than Frankie, and I was about 10 years old, and I remember I was still playing soccer, and I had just retired I had just quit playing soccer to start playing basketball, or I was on my last season. I was on the last season I was going to play soccer for. And I talked about, we went to the bar. I was 10 years old. Frankie's 4 years older than me. That would make Frankie at 14 years old. And he was being anally raped in the back by a guy that looked like Ken Cooper with brown hair. And I talked about, there was a guy that his body shape and height was brown hair. It looks like Ken Cooper raped Frankie when we were in the pool area, playing pool. And then I went to my dad, and when I went over to my dad at the bar, there was a guy, blonde hair, bleached blue eyes, real tiny, short-looking guy that looked evil as a motherfucker, but he looked pure fucking German. Fucking baby blue eyes and fucking blonde hair. He was like a redneck fucking looking guy. but real short, and he was like this with my dad, like, oh, huh? And he was like talking like this, and he was like this with my dad, like he was my dad was like, sitting there like this, like, oh yeah. And this guy was next to my dad on his left side, and he was just like this, like very much like, oh. Like he was very engaging toward him like this. Like, and so my dad never talked to this guy, and he wasn't good friends with him, but my dad usually liked talking to random people he never met and have a beer with total strangers. So that's what he always did. I knew the routine was bar visits. So I talked about that, and that's whenever that guy showed up to the pool and drew these drawings. So Frankie was 14 years old by this time. I'm 10 years old. So by the time 10 years old was the last time Frankie got raped, when I was about 10 years old. So that by this time we reached an all Ken Cooper, Sarah Cooper, keynote 97 on the beat height for Michael Jackson and the faggots and the gays and the transgender movement. That he's now gotten 10 homosexual rapes. That was the last time I think he got raped. It was either that was the last time, or it was Ivan, because there was a close gap between those two in that rape. When we went to Licha's house, and I talked about this Native American Indian kind of looking guy, very built, raped the shit out of Frankie, and I was chasing him inside the house, and I was trying to find out, and they were inside. He was saying something about he was looking for Band-Aids, and they were trying to fix a cabinet inside the bathroom. And I remember hearing Frankie hear dick suck. I didn't hear crying or anything, but I heard him like he was giving oral sex or some shit. I talked about all this, he's crying, he's leaning over. I kept on following him. What are you doing, Frankie? Oh, no, I'm fine. And he didn't even want to talk. And I don't even think he was even talking or responding to me. And he was just kind of like, oh. I don't even think he even said anything when we were out there in the pool. But anyway, I talked about this already. So I think it's important for me to talk about, because it was either those two that were very close together. But regardless of the point, I'm 10 years old. My dad committed suicide, 12 years old. At the age of 13 years old, 3 months before I finished my 6th grade class, we get a brand new car. When that happens, it was like 3 months. We're going to put it at 6 months, because I think I don't want to say, I think it could have been winter time. It could have been close to winter. I don't know if it was still cold during that time in January. It could have been January. It could have been February about this car. But I recall that, so I wanted to talk about that. So my mother could have been lying about that he was making car notes, or however that was. Because my mother would have wanted to feed him money in order to make sure, because he was taking care of the kid, which is right. You want to help, which is, it sounds logical, it sounds practical, it's what you're supposed to do. She's throwing the kid away, and that's my sister. And then that's whenever this whole eruption between my mom stealing my dad's money came along. Anyway, you try to figure things out. Someone bought my mother the car, I have no idea who it was.